Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, no matter who you are or where you're from, when you're growing up, there are those certain tent poles, those certain rubrics about the unknown of growing up, which draw you in, but also push you away at the same time. And I mean, that's a universal fact. And another universal fact is if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion. And you know, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you do because, quite frankly, you're listening right now. If you are, subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. Give us a like. Give us the old 5-star rating on your podcast provider of choice. We're pretty much everywhere. We're over at Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google. And plus, if you can give us a like and subscribe over on YouTube as well, where we archive all of our episodes, we'd really appreciate that too. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook. We're on the Twitter. We're on the Instagram. We're on the TikTok. And we're on the Letterboxd for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because if we love to watch it, write about it, and talk about it, we love it when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please, pay us a visit. On this episode, we got a good one. We got a real good one, as a matter of fact. It just came out in theaters here in Toronto last night, but also it is rolling out to Winnipeg next week, Calgary, and then even Saskatoon in the weeks and months ahead. The film is called Soft, and it is from writer-director Joseph Amenta, and it follows three adolescent friends who become enraptured in the queer nightlife scene over a summer break before a missing persons report pulls them back into the reality that they have chosen to leave behind. It is a coming-of-age story, but it's not one that is done with any sort of heavy-handedness or any of the sort of the expected beats. It all plays very subtle. It all plays very natural. He used three young non-actors for it, and it's really, really a beautiful piece of work. I cannot recommend this film enough. But before you head out to your local theater to check this out, it's playing at the Review here in Toronto, by the way. Not sure where it's going to be playing in Winnipeg and Calgary, but I'm sure you can look that up easily enough. But like I said, before you go see the movie, listen to our conversation with Joseph as we talk about the film, kind of what inspired him, and not just about telling the story, but telling it in sort of the distinct way that he does, with a lot of the visual flares and using non-actors, and the importance to him of putting this story on the big screen, because I definitely think it was an important thing. But like I said, check out Soft in a theater near you if you're in Toronto or Winnipeg or Calgary in the coming weeks. But first, enjoy our talk with Joseph Amenta, because between you and me, it's a darn good one. All right. Well, I mean, first off, just officially, man, just thank you so much for the time today, and congratulations on the film. I absolutely loved it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks for watching it.
Now, I mean, I guess my first question is like, walk me through the origin of it all, because I mean, in watching it, I think something I genuinely appreciated is that it felt very grounded. Like nothing was happening any kind of sort of big emotional swoops. It all felt very sort of on a certain keel, which felt very true to life in many ways.
Well, I think you're right on the money. I'm inspired by people who I meet. I'm inspired by, strangers on the subway, people in line at the cafe, people in the nightclub, kids on the street. So I wanted it to be reflective of that. I wanted to stay grounded. I wanted the moments of surrealism to come from the imagination and movement of these kids. I wanted the audience to feel immersed in their reality. And in order to do that, you really have to balance kind of simple moments with these kind of hyper realistic, kind of emotional responses that these children would have. It was really about, revisiting my own childhood, which I don't remember much of, and wanting to get in touch with what that would look like if I was a different person at that time, more reflective of who I am now. Julian is a bombastic and loud person who takes up a lot of space. And I'm definitely that person now, but I didn't have the gusto when I was that age. I wanted to show queer youth who were hungry to be a part of that community, as opposed to rejecting it, as I did when I was that age.
For sure. Now, I mean, I can imagine casting is definitely going to be
Oof.
not just a vital, but really a challenging part of this to find the right people. Because I mean, obviously, Mateus for as Julian was just absolutely fantastic, and I mean, all the kids were. I can imagine finding that right dynamic definitely took a bit of time.
Yeah, I mean, we had the script, and we were showing it to distributors and production companies, and they really loved the material, but they were nervous about this being really execution dependent, which absolutely is true. Not only were, my leads children, but I was previously in my shorts working with non-actors, and I knew I wanted to work with emerging talent or non-actors for this film.
Yeah.
And most of the leads are non-actors. So I wanted to tackle this and do it the right way. And we spent about 2 years finding these kids. Originally, they were about 13, 14, and we settled closer to 11, 12, maybe 13 near the production point. So they considerably aged down to early teens to adolescent age demographic, and that was scary. It's scary to have three kids in the lead of emotionally heavy material, because I'm balancing those kind of moments of levity with some serious topics. So I knew that we needed to find unicorns, and not only those unicorns, but those unicorns needed to have chemistry with one another. So we went to, queer shelters and drama programs and schools and gay straight alliances, and we really spoke to the queer youth and tried to find different kids who had something special so that I could tailor the writing process and the character themselves after the kid that we cast. That
Mm.
way I can utilize what their resources naturally are, and I can push them forward without giving the material that they don't have reference for. That's really my style, demystifying the camera. So I just knew I needed three kids who were capable of being kids in front of the camera. And I think I did that.
No, I think you did that and then some, man, because I mean, again, they all deliver such fantastic performances. And I mean, I
Thank
love
you.
just what you mentioned about sort of them being having to have reference. And I mean, do you get a lot of rehearsal time on something like this to be able to walk them through this? Because I mean, obviously, part of it is their lives, obviously, but at the same time, you still have to be able to sort of give them a certain understanding of the material in order for it all to work as well as it does. Like, do you get a lot of rehearsal time to sort of really make sure that they click and it all clicks with the material as well?
Well, I mean, this is a micro budget. So
Of
we
course.
were
Yeah, yeah.
really strained, really, really strained. And I was very clear with the team from the very beginning that we could not compromise rehearsal. And we had about a month of rehearsal with the kids. And some of those rehearsals were just going to the playground, getting ice cream, me completely throwing away certain written sequences in favor of what the kids were naturally doing within the space, within the scene, within the playground, while we were getting ice cream and walking back to the rehearsal space. So it was really about adapting to what I was seeing in that month, as opposed to getting the children to a specific performance level to meet the script. It was a reversal. There were certain scenes, especially with Mateus as the lead, where we really needed to hone in on specifics within a scene, and the dialogue wasn't changing or shifting too heavily, and he was capable of meeting that challenge. But when the kids were together, it was really about shaving away the idea I had on page and discovering what they were offering in those moments of rehearsal.
Mm.
It was a brilliant process. It was a humbling process to be able to listen and rewrite and discover. And that's why I made the film to begin with. I mentioned earlier, I don't remember much of my childhood. So to be in a room for almost a month with these three kids and discover that language and the way that they see life and their shifting emotions so quickly and how fast they can fall in love with one another. It was a really beautiful experience to have captured on camera.
Absolutely. No, and I mean, there is something about it as well because there's definite visual language to the film as well. I mean, there are scenes that play so well and so powerfully, but I mean, even without dialogue. I mean, I even think of the scene of Mateus when he sneaks into the club and he goes and he sees and he's in the bathroom
Mm.
and he sees what's going on. There's no dialogue there, but it's shot so beautifully. Like, can you talk to me a little bit about how you wanted this film to look? Because again, there's a very to me there was a very beautiful but also a very dark
Mm.
distinctive style to the film.
I appreciate that. I've been honing this visual style, this visual language for quite a few years with my shorts. And it's kind of nomadic and immersive, docu style, colorful, but very gritty.
Mm.
And shout out to Liam Higgins who shot the film. I put a lot of restrictions on him, especially for his first feature. I was talking about, never having the camera stable, always utilizing a close up, making sure that we were on a level playing field with the kids so that we weren't looking down on them or we weren't omniscient as a viewer, as a parent would be to a child. We were in their world. We felt like an invisible fourth member of this trio, and we were constantly moving with them, seeing what they see, not seeing what they don't see. I wanted to use silence because I find that when kids are together, they're extremely loud. But when a child is alone and they're surrounded by adults, it's overwhelmingly silent. And I think that those moments are beautiful and impactful, and the dichotomy between their kind of invincible joy and bombastic nature is completely juxtaposed with them feeling small and overwhelmed in a space.
No, absolutely. I mean, and that it juxtaposes so well, like you said, not just when they're together, but I mean, especially in the club scenes with the music and just sort of how engulfing it is for these kids to be in this world. And I mean, it's one of those things where it's a small touch, but I mean, it creates for so much more of an immersive experience, which for me as just a viewer, just gets me more sort of in set to this world. And I mean, something else that you did in this film, which really got me sort of in the right mindset, without giving too much away, there is a primary character who disappears, and there are things that are going on. It's one of those things that wasn't dealt with in a heavy-handed manner, or wasn't sort of thrown at the screen in sort of a statement kind of way. No, this is just a reality. These things happen. How important was it for you to really put sort of the colder realities of jumping into this world as a part of the story?
Well, I think I always try to balance kind of joy in any of my
Yeah.
characters, no matter what their circumstance are. I want the audience to understand that even with tribulation, even with challenges, these characters are brilliant. They're resilient. They're inspired, and they'll continue pushing through. And showing that power prior was really, really important. Showing what we had to lose or what was in jeopardy. I go to the understanding where what the children see is what the audience sees.
Mm.
So when their world is consumed by getting into a club, something as simple as breaching the walls of this forbidden palace, everything else, all those bits that pass them by, pass the audience by,
Yeah.
until it begins to sink in. It was really important for the shift in the film to feel fairly abrupt. I'm planting small seeds, but
Yeah.
I'm not heavy-handed because I want the panic to be growing as opposed to immediate
Yeah.
and fizzled. And the
No,
kids begin to scramble. I mean, we see Julian, who feels invincible at the beginning of the film, untouchable, begin to slowly wither, and he's losing his stability. He's losing his footing, and he's starting to lash out at the two people who he relies on and loves the most.
was that a challenge for you as a director? Because I mean, obviously, you're taking these kids. I mean, and particularly, your lead through Julian, and I mean, in this really complex emotional arc. And I mean, and like you said, it's micro budget. You don't necessarily have time to sort of really walk through the A's and B's. Like, how was, I guess, maybe your experience like walking kids through these really complex emotional arcs?
Well, I have a fair bit of experience not only with working with kids, but also working with non-actors, and
Right.
I find that was really a massive help for me, understanding limitations and strict barriers, and wanting to honor a way for the actors and these children to feel as comfortable as possible tackling some challenging subject matter. It was really just about fostering a relationship with them. It was allowing for, us to create an environment where they could experience small moments. And in the heavier scenes in the film, I really relied on Mateus, and he and I had quite a special bond where he showed up very prepared, ready to jump as high as he possibly could, and I was there if he needed to be, swooped up. So it was always going to be a challenge, and I pushed very, very hard. I almost question the ethical nature of doing this kind of content,
Hmm.
long format, with three young kids like this. I mean, I think Zion was 12, maybe 11, and we did everything we could. We We had a counselor on standby who was willing to talk to the kids at any time. We tried our best to create an infrastructure for them to feel safe. But at the end of the day, we're asking a lot of these kids emotionally, and I think at the end of the day, I spoke to one of the kids' parents, and I think that specific parent was perhaps the hardest on me while we were in production. And I respected that, but it made me nervous. And after the film was released at TIFF and they saw the film, they approached me in tears. And they were so moved by the film and were so thankful that they had a time capsule of their child so brilliantly displayed at that age. Because at the time of premiere, they had already had a growth spurt. Their voice had dropped. And now we have this capsule of these three brilliant children moving through the city like colorful bandits, like they're untouchable. And that for me brings me so much joy.
And I mean, that's got to be an unexpected creative payoff as well, because I mean, again, you're not necessarily going into this with that kind of mindset, but again, just to see sort of not these kids evolve, not just during the film, but I mean, I can imagine during your entire relationship with them is kind of inexplicable.
Yeah, I mean, they absolutely shifted in the 8 months that I didn't see them. And, I think understanding the ripple effect of what this kind of production can have on their development is something that I needed to come to terms with. I needed to take responsibility for. I think that we had a really beautiful experience shooting this film. We had nothing. We had very little experience. We were punching much above our weight, and we were dealing with heavy subject matter with very young kids, and everyone left feeling proud, and everyone left feeling like the experience was well worth it. And for me, that is a badge of honor that will never go away.
Oh, absolutely, man. You wear that proud. But I mean, I've got to ask, because like you did mention, you do have experience in shorts, but I mean, this is your first jump to feature. And I mean, I'm kind of curious, is there anything in the process between short and feature that differentiates that you learned that maybe you didn't expect to learn?
Oh my God. They're so incredibly different. They're so incredibly different. I was pumping out a short for 3 years straight. I had a new short on the circuit for 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
And I think when you move to a feature, just the time it takes to get everything in order, especially at this budget level, takes years. It takes years. And the faith you have to have in the material, in the idea, in the story, the inspiration that needs to persist amongst all of those challenges makes you think about jumping back into that pool for the second, third, fourth, because you need to have that long-lasting inspiration for years. I think the biggest thing that was a challenge for me, and I'm quite unshakable, I'm quite resolute, was shooting for a month pretty much straight, because weekends I was working. It began to create a sense of delirium where I was unsure of my decisions.
Right.
By the last week, I was less able to communicate. I was second guessing things that I was so sure of at the beginning. So you have to understand the endurance involved in a month of production, especially when we're balancing the kids. They have to have a break every 45 minutes. Our days are short, so we're moving at double speed. It just felt like the most challenging gauntlet test I've ever had to experience. And just being prepared for the next one, to understand that this is a marathon and not a sprint, is something that I really, really learned from this experience.
That is absolutely true, man. I mean, it's amazing, but I mean, I think you've done a hell of a job with this. And I mean, just to start putting a bow on this, it's a silly question, but it's one I always like to ask. Can you think back to the younger days? I mean, again, of what you can remember. Like, was there something you saw that was a formative moment that made you want to sort of get into the business of being a filmmaker and being a storyteller?
I remember so distinctly. I just remember so distinctly writing stories in my room while, so many of my friends were outside at a cottage playing.
Right.
And I was looking at these words on a page, and they were like absolute jibber jabber. And I had such an intensity in my soul to capture them on camera. And I saved everything I had, every penny I had to buy a camcorder, one of those
Right,
old camcorders.
right, right.
And I would film with this camcorder and I had no idea how to get the footage on a computer. And for years, the only obstacle to my brilliance was getting this footage onto a computer. It was back in the early 2000s. And and I remember just being so focused on this thing that felt so beyond my years. And I knew that it was in my blood, and I knew that I needed to make it happen. And it was a shock for my parents, but I think that they were excited by me being so resolute with this decision. It was just there. It was just there.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Now, I mean, again, just to wrap this up, obviously, the film has, been doing the festival circuit. It's been being really well received. And I mean, now you're sort of on the brink of it being put out there into the world. And I mean, this is obviously, just talking to you, I can tell this is a very personal story for you. But I mean, I'm kind of curious, as a creator, as a storyteller, like, can you sort of let a story like this out into the universe and let it go? Or will there always be a little part of you that holds on to this one? Just, I mean, for a variety of different reasons, emotionally, personally, creatively.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first feature is something so incredibly special. I think the fact that we were able to create this against all those odds with so little is so inspiring to me and gives me so much pride. I think that this is going to be, the love of my life for a very, very long time. But I'm certainly ready for audiences to watch it. I think audiences from all different types and walks of life can enjoy this film. I pride myself on telling authentic and engaging stories with a lot of flair. And I don't think that this is exclusively for the queer community. I think that this is for people who love engaging authentic cinema and want to jump down the rabbit hole with these three friends. And ultimately, I'm going to be able to look back on this film and be inspired by my brash, naive bravery to even think that I could pull this off, and give myself a bit of a pat on the back for being able to do so. So I'm incredibly proud, and I just want as many eyes to see the film as possible. I want them to have a good time watching it, and hopefully by the end of it, feel moved.
Brother, keep up that, brash, naive confidence, man, because it's a hell of a piece of work. And I can't wait for
Thank you
audiences
so
to see it,
much.
man. And I can't wait for more people. I can't wait for the next one. But I mean, honestly, man, keep up the good work and correct.
Thank you.
Congratulations on this film. It's a fantastic piece of work.
I appreciate that so much. Thank you, and thanks for your time. You asked some great questions. Thank you.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.